Welcome to New Jersey HorrorCon. How's everybody doing? All right, we have an amazing panel for you today. The legendary, iconic William Daniels. Make some noise. So, starting at the beginning, if we could, coming from a family of performers, was it inevitable to you that you would grow up to become an actor, or was it more of a slow realization that that's what you wanted to do with your life?
My sister and I, we were a song and dance team. And my mother, who was a very ambitious theatrical mother, would take us to these auditions. And we were basically tap dancers. So at the audition, we tap danced, and he said, "No, wait a minute. This is radio. Tap dancing's no good." Now, if they sang, whoop, grabs us, takes us home, sings us, and teaches us a song.
That's his mother.
And then we go back again, and he says, no, not in unison, in harmony. Takes us home again, teaches us the harmony. And then we get back, and he says, yeah, that's it. So that's how it all started.
See, Bill's father was a bricklayer, and his mother was a telephone operator.
Oh, okay.
They had no background in the business, but she was going to get them out of Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
And they were in a very poor part of Brooklyn.
So I want to talk a bit about The Graduate, if we could. That is a film that is as perfect today as it was 51 years ago now. Did you have any idea at the time that you were making something with that kind of staying power?
No, you really don't know what you've got. And the first thing we didn't know that what we got was this young man who's only be seen off Broadway, and his name was Dustin Hoffman. And that made Dustin Hoffman a star. And he was very talented, and the whole picture, I'm trying to recall, it was very pleasant.
It was Mike Nichols.
Mike Nichols, who was a wonderful performer and director, was directing us, and it was all very casual. We met for 3 weeks of rehearsal before we filmed, and we got into 2 weeks, and he said, you know what, I'm acting like we're out of town. Just go home and I'll see you. At the filming, and that's the way it went. There was no pressure. It was all very pleasant, and it turned out rather well, I understand.
Bill, why don't you tell them about the song?
The what?
Mrs. Robinson.
What about it?
That was when you knew what the film was about.
Our star was a wonderful Broadway actress named Anne Bancroft. And she was playing Dustin's mother.
No.
Uh-huh.
He had the affair with her. She was playing the girl's mother. Annie played the girl's mother.
Why don't you take over?
Well, no, but
I don't remember.
No, I know. The part that I like is when you tell about the two guys that wrote the song. And that's when you knew what the picture was going to be about. Remember that?
No.
You don't remember that? Simon and Garfunkel?
And they sang what?
They said Mike had you, played for you, so he couldn't decide who to use to do the music.
Right.
Mike, and he brought you in, and you guys all listened.
Yeah.
And you listened to this music.
Yeah.
You said one tall guy and one short guy.
Yes.
And
it
it
was
was
Simon and Garfunkel.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
And they played the sound of what?
Yeah. And then, I didn't really know what the picture was about. I thought it was about Anne Bancroft, who was a famous Broadway actress. And, well, there was this kid, and, he was nice, but his name was Dustin Hoffman. And but then I heard the music, the sounds of silence, and I realized that, this picture is not starring her, it's starring this kid. And that's when it all came together in my mind. And really, I was quite right, because it made Dustin a very big star.
Very big star. So about 15 years after The Graduate, and you get the role of Dr. Mark Craig on the classic TV show St. Elsewhere. How did that role come your way, and what are some of your fondest memories from that show?
Well, there were a lot of fond memories, but the first one was that the producer, who was married to Blythe Danner, you might know her name, at any rate, he did something that I've never had done before. He said, "Bill, I'm sending you 5 scripts, and I wanted to let you know, I want to know if you would be interested in playing Dr. Craig." And so I read them, and the writing was very good, but Dr. Craig's part was very small. So I said, "Well, Bruce, I think you got a hit on this, but this guy is practically not in it." He said, "Billy, when the writers see what you do with it, they will write for you." And that's what happened. And they started writing for me, and pretty soon they brought in my wife, who was sitting next to me. So then I had to behave off stage, and it went very well.
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, there's no way I could pass up asking you about another classic you did from around the same time, the absolutely iconic Knight Rider. What were your first impressions of that project, and what's it like seeing the car again?
There was this producer who I had done a 90-minute television show, me and Roberta Peters, and he sent me a script. No. He said, "Could you come over and read some material I have here to take to New York to the producers to try to sell it?" I hadn't seen it or anything. He didn't say anything about it. I said, "Sure." So I went over, he handed me the script, and I said, "This is about a car?" "And it talks." Okay. And I started reading. He said, "Could you make it like Ma Bell?" I said, "No." And I kept reading. He said, "How about," I said, "Would you just let me read it, please?" And then I go bye-bye. "Okay, thank you." So I read it. I thought it was crazy, a car that talks. And so I went home, and about 3 weeks later, he said, "We sold it. And we want you to do the voice of the car." I said, "Well, I'm doing St. Elsewhere, and I'm kind of busy." They said, "It's the same network. We've talked to them, and they'll work around you." So my agent said, "Billy, you can't turn down a job like that. They'll just record it whenever you're available." And that's really what happened. I just went over to a studio and read the lines. I never met David Hasselhoff until we had a Christmas party after the show had been a hit. And he said, "You son of a, I'm out in the desert and, sweating and everything. And what do? You go into the studio? How long does it take you to knock it off?" I said, 45, 50 minutes. He said, "I hate you." David was a great guy. Anyway, that's the way it worked. I went into a studio and did K.I.T.T, and that was it.
And I think the reason that it's gone so long and so well is that he wouldn't do it the way they wanted.
Yeah.
He said, no, he's a character, he's a person. He played it like a person, and that's why it's lasted so long.
Oh, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely. So it was about 5 years after St. Elsewhere ended, you got the role that cemented your place in the hearts of any kid who lived through the 90s. And I've actually heard you were initially hesitant to take the role.
Boy Meets World.
Yeah, you were hesitant to take the role of Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World at first.
Michael Jacobs.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
He gave me this script, and it was a nice script, but I said, I went and saw Michael Jacobs, who's the producer, and I said, "This guy's got a funny name, Feeney." He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "I'll tell you what I've based it on. I based it on a high school teacher who I had a great deal of respect for. And I will always bear in mind not to make him a foolish character." And so I said, "Okay, under those circumstances, I'll do it." But Feeney sounded like somebody was going to be, I don't know, crazy. But it wasn't. He just wrote it for me. And it turned out very well, actually.
Very, very well.
Yeah.
I was curious what your proudest moment was from that show, from Boy Meets World.
It was the last episode, and the kids left the room. And to the empty room, I said, I love you all. And I don't know, for some reason it moved me. And that was my favorite moment. To an empty classroom. Oh, well.
Well, that was a great moment. Everyone loves the finale. So I want to give a chance for the audience to get involved. Anyone have any questions out there, guys? It's a little cold. Okay, we got one out in the back. But
You say you spent 45 minutes that, like how many days per week would you spend on Night Rider?
One day, 45 to 50 minutes.
and that would be a whole per script for an episode?
What?
For one episode?
For one episode, yes.
Wow.
He would read each line 3 times.
And I let them take their choice. Slow, medium, and excited. Let them take their choice.
And then they would fit it in, which is exactly what they've done with the Melissa McCarthy
I never thought
movie.
it would work.
The Melissa
didn't.
McCarthy movie
I
has
really
already
didn't.
filmed. They did his voice before they even filmed, doing all kinds of K.I.T.T lines that they wrote, and he did them all, and he did them all three or four ways, and they fit that into the production. They fit that into the scene that the actors are acting. That's the way it works.
Awesome. Do you have any other questions out there, guys? Oh, there's one right there.
You've had an impressive career on the stage and screen. I'm wondering your hobbies that you've had along the way.
I love to play tennis. I used to play a lot more than I do. First singles, now doubles, but I still love it. And I'm a great reader. I read a lot. And those are probably the two main
I think music,
hobbies that I
not
have.
now so much, but music. You were such a great collector.
Oh, well, yes.
He'd rather go to Carnegie Hall and hear a symphony than go to a play.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I got a chance when I was young to go to a high school that Mayor LaGuardia of New York had just opened up on 135th Street and Convent Avenue. It was called the High School of Music and Art, and you had to audition to get in. And I was working at that time in grade school in a Catholic school, and this nun told me about this place. And so I went and I auditioned and I got in. And I loved it. It introduced me to classical music, which I didn't know anything about. And we had performances, and we had wonderful people come and conduct the orchestra and the chorus. Toscanini, what was the other guy's name? I'll think of it. But anyway, it was a great experience, and I had spent 2 years there until I got a job playing in New York in a show called Life with Father. And I had to leave because the school wouldn't let me out for matinees. It was very strict that way. So I had to leave and go into a cover for the law in somebody's apartment on 53rd Street, where I'd go in and check in and say, by the way, I have an appointment, and I'd leave, go down and have coffee and cup chock full of nuts, little donut, and I didn't go to school. I really didn't go to school until I wanted to go to Northwestern, and I applied, and they wanted my grades. Well, my grades were very iffy. So the guy who runs the school on 53rd Street and in his apartment called me and he said, "You're applying for college?" With that surprise on his voice. I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, they want your grades." I said, "Yes, you have to fill that out." He said, "Well, you know, we had a fire here." I said, "What?" "Yeah, I'm sorry, we had a fire and all the records were destroyed." This was a total lie. He just never kept any records. So he said, "Do you remember any of your grades?" Well, now I'm thinking, now Bill, don't go too far. Oh yeah, what? English? We didn't have English. 89. History? We didn't have history. 85. And I went down the list. You know, I got a kind of a B+ average out of something that didn't exist. And that's the way I went into college, and I never would have gotten through without her. And, you know, at Northwestern they had a very big theater department, which is the reason I wanted to go there. And so I went there. Now I'm just entering the school, and I wanted to audition for a play that they were going to do. A terrible play called Bury the Dead, full of laughs. Anyway, and I heard all these. Now I'm a cocky kid, right? I've been on Broadway, and I hear all these people read, and I thought, oh Christ. And then the next one. Then I'm thinking, I don't know whether I want to be in this turkey. And then I heard an actress. And I looked back, and there's this blonde sitting in the back row. An actress. The only one I've heard there. So I waited at the door when we was dismissed, and as she came by, I said, "How about a cup of coffee?" And she said, "You're too short." I said, "Come on, have a cup of coffee." She said, "Okay." So we've been together ever since.
Aw, that's awesome.
And,
It's about 70
that's the way it
years.
started.
About 70 years.
Wow, 70 years.
Who was some baseball player got an award for showing up the most, not missing any games, and he got a big award for it. I don't remember when that happened. I thought that was so funny.
That is funny. I'm not sure. I'm not a big baseball guy, but I'll have to look that up and annotate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Any questions out there at the moment, guys? Oh, that's right. The guy in the back was waiting.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of Blake. Also a big fan of your film on the stage, 1776. And I listen to it all the time, the cast parts. I was wondering, like, did you do musical theater a lot? And it didn't seem like you did musical theater a lot. And why did you choose to do this one specifically?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of choosing. I can't remember how it came about.
Well, I think that I remember very well because I read the script before he did, and he said, I said, "Billy, this is a great part for you." I said, "I don't think you can sing it, but it's a great part," because he wasn't that big a singer, you know. And I said, it's like it's written for you. And then he read it, and he auditioned and blew the audition. He had been in a musical with Barbara Harris, great comedian, singer, actress who just died recently, and he had sung that. So he came in and sang that song, which was like, "Wait till you're 65," a light little thing. And he blew the lyric. It didn't matter. They wanted him, and so when he did it, he had to study very hard. But Bill, the part required the singing. It required it, and he did it. And I was the most surprised of all, because and he hadn't been singing much. He had a kind of a light, cute Frank Sinatra kind of thing, you know, but nothing like that on Broadway. And so I was surprised, but he just decided he had to sing 10 songs or 11, and he had to do it. So he did it. That kind of thing, I will say, as much as I think she was terrible, that kind of discipline, that kind of thing came from his mother, who just says, "You do it, and do it right."
Very cool.
She was tough.
Cool. Questions out there, guys?
But he did not pursue musicals particularly, no.
No.
I have a question for both of you. First, Bonnie, how was it playing Dean from Boy Meets World along with your husband?
Oh, I enjoyed that part. Some of the scripts I didn't, but I had one scene, a very good scene with one of the Savage Boys, not Ben, but his brother, Fred, who makes a great villain. He's a really sweet, nice guy. But he was kind of the villain of the piece, and I had to say to him that you don't know what it is to be a teacher next to him or something like that. And it was because he was being bad. And it was, I loved that scene. And it was fun. There was some scene with a lot of bees in it. I remember that. That was kind of silly. But I only did about 6 or 7 of them, but it was lovely. But the most fun I had working with Bill was St. Elsewhere, which is, I guess, before your time. But anyway, it was a great show.
My question for Bill was, Bill, you recently played Mr. Feeney on Girl Meets World. How was your experience with that, and what is your relationship now with the cast?
Well, the cast goes that way, they disappear. I see one or maybe accidentally somewhere, but after it was over, we all... And what other part of the question?
He asked if you liked reprising the role.
Did you like redoing it again? Wasn't much to do.
No, I've done it. Huh? Mm-hmm. No, I don't think I would like to do it again. However, if I was offered the job, I thought I'd get a laugh on that.
I got a pretty good laugh.
But he it was fun when he started. Ben was a little boy.
Yes.
And toward the end, and Girl Meets World.
Yes. He'd drive into the studio driving a truck. This little boy. But we did the show for 6 seasons, so he went from 12 to 18. So
and then when they came back in Boy Meets World, I remember Ben was so darling. He kind of took Bill under his wing and said, "Come on, Bill, we'll do this. Okay, we'll do that again. Okay, Bill."
Yes,
and
he
became the director. That was cute after he had been this little kid. It was fun. Taking care of Mr. Feeney.
Actually, one thing I wanted to ask before we turn back to the audience is what you could tell us about your time as president of the Screen Actors Guild.
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know. It was an impulse. I was having breakfast with a bunch of pals who were actors in the Screen Actors Guild, and they were complaining about what was happening in the guild, and they were not getting a helpful ear of the president. So they said to me, "Would you come and tell us if you can find somebody to run?" They wanted me to run, but that's how they got me there. And so I heard all their problems, and suddenly I found myself saying, "How about me?" Which is probably the dumbest thing I ever should have done. But they said, "Would you do that?" I said, "Well, I don't know if I could get elected." They said, "You'd get elected in a minute." So we ran, and I ran into a lot of trouble in the union, and we had a 6-month strike over residuals, and we had that, and back and forth with the producers who were in New York over and over again. I don't know how many times I went back to New York to talk to these guys. And they really didn't talk to you. They told you, "This is what you're getting." And I'd say, "But wait a minute." They said, "That's it. This is what you're getting." So, for some reason or another, Jack Warner, who is Warner Brothers, asked to see me.
It wasn't Jack Warner, honey.
Oh, who was it?
The guy at MCA.
Who?
The guy at MCA. He ran MCA.
But this other story was a much better story. All right.
No. It was. You went to see him, but
Lou Wasserman?
Lou Wasserman. Who's Lou Wasserman?
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. So they said Mr. Wasserman would like to see you. I'd never met him. He ran the studio. He ran everything.
NBC, wasn't it? Yeah, NBC.
So I went to see Mr. Wasserman, and he said, Bill, I said, Mr. Wasserman, he said, call me Jack. Mr.
Lou. Lou.
No. Hmm?
Lou, you're mixing it up with Jack Warner, who produced
You wanna tell the
1770.
story?
No.
I get it all mixed up. Anyway, I remember sitting with him in his office at the studio, and you know they have all these.
Universal. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, he ran Universal.
So he said to me, Bill, you know, I have all these theaters here,
Sets.
and I want to keep them busy. He said, I have to keep them busy. And I said, well, I can understand that. I didn't at the time have the wherewithal to say, busy with what? Because he would have had to say, with actors. And that was who I was representing to him. And he was holding out on them. And, you know, they could afford it in a minute. But they just have a theory that you don't give them anything that you don't have to. That's their creed.
That's all business.
And it's all business. So we went on strike, and then that was that.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about he was miserable, absolutely miserable for 2 years as the president of the Screen Actors Guild. He was just so sorry that he'd gotten involved because, I tell you the truth, in all politics, there's so much scheming and there's so much plotting, and you belong to one group or another. And, well, you see the extreme example today in Washington with what's going on. It's all about power. It's not about the people. It's all about power. And the Screen Actors Guild was the same way. It's all about the guild. It's not about the actors. It's about the guild. The guild has to be strong. We have to have it's never about the people involved. And that's the whole fucking problem in our whole country. It's never about the people. It's about the organization. We have to be in power. We're the organization. You know, it's like what they fight about in Washington. And I tell you, you got to be very brave to get mixed up in that because they're not honest. And when you're honest, you're the only vote in the room. Because I know I was there too. I was on the board, SAG. And after Bill left, he was smart. He got out as soon as his 2 years was up. And I stayed around on the board.
Oh, man. Wow. Well, I'm sorry to bring up such a rough time.
Sorry.
I had no idea. We do have time for one more from the audience. If going in.
So, Mr. Daniels, as you know, Boy Meets World continues to be shown on the air to this day, and
Used to be what?
it's still shown on TV. It's never really went off the air, and 1776 is still shown in lab history classes. How does that feel knowing that these shows and movies, even The Graduate, is still shown in a lot of film classes? How does that feel knowing that you've created such a legacy that many years from now people will still be quoting your role as George Feeney or showing you as John Adams?
How does it feel? It's a total surprise, actually, for me.
It's what?
But it's very gratifying. But it's in the past, you know?
I don't think it gives him as much. I encourage him to do things like this because it doesn't give him enough, you know. So I think, well, maybe, you know, having the people and all that helps. I'm very impressed, but I don't think Bill is that impressed. He's just a hired hand. He figures he's just a hired hand, you know. He doesn't really realize why.
Well, I think I can safely say he's the only one in the room who's not impressed then. So, but that's about all the time we have, unfortunately. So show him how impressed you are. Give him a nice round of applause, guys. William Daniels, his lovely wife.